Welcome back to the Hip Replacement Podcast. I'm Chris Bystriansky, your host. I've had both my hips replaced over the last 10, 12 years, and I've lived an active and healthy lifestyle. And I'm here to share these things that I've done over the years with you. And today, we're going to talk about getting back to the activities that we love. And it could be something different for everybody. For me, one of the major things that I wanted to get back to after I had my initial recovery was getting back to golf. I have a long history of playing golf, and golf was one of the first things I did as a little kid growing up. It was kind of a babysitter for me where me and my friends would go to the golf course. We'd sometimes take the city bus to the golf course and hang out there, wait to play, and then take the bus back home and then get ready for baseball practice later in the afternoon. So I spent a lot of time on the golf courses, even from a very young age. I grew up playing golf. I golfed in high school and I golfed in college. And it's just one of the activities that I could not wait to get back to after, after the hip replacement surgery. So it just gives me, when I'm out on the golf course, it helps me relax, it helps me focus, and just helps me recharge and just get a little rest from the other things that I'm doing throughout the day, whether I'm working a lot or staying in front of my computers. Just golf helps me relax and recharge. And this could be something else completely different for you. It could be, maybe it's gardening, or maybe it's yoga, or maybe it's running, or some other maybe adult activity with that special someone for you. So it doesn't really matter what it is. It's just being able to get back to the activities that we love to do. So again, that was golf for me. And just, I started slow. I mean, and I took a long time after the hip replacement surgeries before I returned to the golf course. Maybe, I think it was about 6 or 9 months after my surgeries where I started to at least chip and putt and just do some simple things, just standing still, because I was actually terrified of moving the hip implant, and I didn't want to do anything to damage the progress that I had made. So I took it very, very slow, and I just worked my way up over time. And I had a couple things in mind before I really dove into back into golf. And I knew that I would have to somehow modify the way I golfed. So, playing golf for so long, I usually play from the farthest tees because I'm an okay golfer, and I'm okay. I mean, I've never won any tournaments. I've never won tournaments, but I'm not a pro, but I can handle myself on the golf course pretty well. And it's actually a couple of things on my bucket list to do. So I would love to play Augusta National Golf Club or Cypress Point in California. So if you happen to have a contact there or be a member there and you're looking for somebody to round out your golf group, let me know, and maybe I could clear my schedule and make it out there. As a matter of fact, I probably could clear my schedule and make it out there to play one of those courses, because those are on my bucket list they've been on my bucket list for a very, very long time. I actually read a book about Augusta National when I was in 3rd grade, and it's just been something that I've always wanted to do long before I knew there was a pro tournament at that course. But golf is really a way for me to relax. And actually, I'm going to go golf when I'm done recording this podcast. So it's very helpful to me in my daily health, mental health, and physical health routine. But I knew that I could not be as aggressive as I wanted to be on the golf course following my hip replacement surgeries. And what do I mean by that? So when I golf, I swing hard, okay? I torque my hips really good. Again, I'm playing from the farthest tips. I want to put the ball out as far as possible. So I'm really torquing my hips. So in that sense, I did not modify much with that. There's some things that I do to make sure that I can keep golfing and not impact my hips that much. So the first thing I do is I do not carry my bag anymore. I still walk as often as I can. Sometimes I play with somebody who wants to ride in a golf cart, and I'll ride in a golf cart just to speed things up. But I try to walk the golf course as often as I possibly can rather than ride. So I still walk, but instead of carrying my bag, I use a push cart. And what that does is it just takes some pressure off of my hips. So that's the first modification that I make. And it really is helpful. I carry my bag from the car to the golf course and, short distances. If I have to move the golf bag, that's fine. But I do not walk that. It could be 3 to 4 mile walk for a 9-hole and maybe a 7-mile walk for 18 holes. And I don't carry my bag anymore because it's that extra 15, 20 pounds over that distance, I feel really impacts my hips. So I use a push cart, and I'm totally happy with that. It's one of the modifications that I've had to make. Another thing I do is I simply open up my left leg. And if you're not a golfer, that doesn't mean much to you, but I open up my left foot a little bit to take some of that pressure off my front leg and my front hip. And I've lost a little bit of distance, but it's still something manageable. And it really helps me swing as hard as I want to, under control, of course, but I can still play golf at a high level, even though I've had both my hips replaced. So just that little movement of my front leg is in this setup is very helpful. Another thing I do is, I didn't rush getting back. I chipped and putted for a short amount of time after months, 6, 9, 12 months after my surgery before I started to really get back. And I still remember my first 18 holes walking after my surgeries. And it was a huge milestone for me because it really helped me, give me the confidence to really do more of the things that I wanted to do. And I remember coming home and telling my wife about it. Yeah, I walked 18 holes, and this was the first time I've done that. Not since the surgery, but for the years before the surgery, when I couldn't walk anymore because of the hip pain was so severe that I couldn't walk. So not only did I wait to walk after the surgery, but it was years before. So it had been 3, 4, 5 years since I've walked 18 holes on the golf course since before the surgery. So it was a huge accomplishment, and I was so happy to get back. Again, I had to make some modifications, and I still do those things to this day. And it's been more than 10 years. Now, you may have different activities that you want to get back to, and one of the activities that I know folks want to get back to, and frankly I've gotten back to, is running. And running, I've had to make some modifications to the running too. I think the theme here is the modifications to that activity. With running, I used to love to go run too, and I ran through my 20s and into my late teens, my 20s and my early 30s, until the hip pain just got to be so severe I couldn't do much of that at all. And I used to love to run through the forest on these paths. And actually, there were times I would get up in the morning at 5, 6 in the morning over the summer and go run through the forest and run right by 20, 30 deer that were just standing next to the path I was on. So that was just an amazing experience to run right by and nature and animals and just be in a forest and a canopy of trees. And it was just so refreshing. And I felt so alive when I was doing that I wanted to get back to that. I really miss that. But again, I've had to make some modifications to my running as well. And here's what they are. If you're going to start running after surgery, I strongly suggest making these modifications to take as much pressure off your hips as possible. Number one, don't rush back. Make sure that your body and the bones have recovered. I read stuff on social media about people running, shortly after surgery, a couple months after surgery, and that, I don't know if that would not have worked for me. So take your time and make sure you're strong enough and recovered enough to do the running. But number one, take your time. Another thing I do, so number two would be I land on my toes rather than landing on my heels. And what that does is it lets my foot and my lower leg take a lot of the burden and pressure of my running stride rather than my upper legs as if I were landing on my heel. So that's helpful. I've had to modify my running technique a little bit, but those things allow me to run when I want to. Another thing I do is I change the tempo. So instead of running for 30 minutes or an hour like I used to, or a certain distance, 3, 4, 5 miles, now what I'll do is I'll run for 2 minutes and walk for 2 minutes. And that alternating makes a big difference because, number one, it reduces the impact. And number two, it changes the way my hip and the muscles in my hip are working. I'm taking much longer strides when I'm running than when I'm walking. And it just seems to lubricate the hip a little bit better if I alternate between the running and the walking. I've done Ironman triathlons. I've been to Ultraman events where it's a double marathon in one day, and that technique that process of running and walking, alternating between those two, helps people cover a distance faster, and also helps preserve the hip and energy over a longer term. So don't feel embarrassed about walking a part of your run or a part of your distance. If you want to do a half marathon or a marathon or a 5K, nowhere, anywhere does it say you have to run the whole thing or any of it, as a matter of fact. Those events are distance-based. They might have an outside time limit, and as long as you cover that distance within that time limit, regardless of your speed of your walk or your run, you will have finished the event in the appropriate amount of time and considered a finisher. So do not be embarrassed about walking a portion or all of one of these events, and you can do it. And with that mindset, you'll be able to accomplish a lot more than simply stopping yourself from participating in one of these events because your mindset is that, oh, I can't run that far. You don't have to run any of it. All right. So that is one of the things that helped me, is alternating between running and walking. A third thing that has helped me is to try to run on a softer surface. So I enjoy running on grass or gravel, like a trail run, rather than the hard concrete. And I do run on the street in my neighborhood, and people look at me like I'm absolutely crazy because the sidewalk is just 10 feet away. And the reason I walk on the street is because the asphalt on the street seems much softer to me than the concrete on the sidewalk. And there's not a lot of traffic, so it's pretty safe. There's not a lot of cars, so I can do it without fear of being hit by a car or anything like that. But I feel significantly better when I do my run walk combo on the street, or even walk on the street, rather than doing that same thing on the sidewalk, which is pretty close. I get some strange looks, but that's okay. So those three things, I alternate between running and the walking and the landing on my toes, and I try to run on softer surfaces. So those are some of the modifications that I've had to make to another activity that I really enjoy, which is the running. And the thing with the running is that it just gave me a sense of accomplishment and covering a distance and feeling healthy. And I know a lot of folks have those same You can call it a runner's high or anything that makes you feel good and energized. It doesn't matter what the activity is. I've been fortunate enough, and maybe think about these too. This is another strategy that I use, is that I alternate, or I go with alternative activities. So I spend time on cycling or swimming, and I use those as substitutes for running. I don't run anywhere as near as much as I used to, because I have those other activities that I can fall back on. And maybe if you're a runner or you'd like to get back to running, think about these alternate activities. And maybe they're not swimming or cycling, but maybe they're tennis, or what's popular now is pickleball, or anything just to stay healthy. We have a great opportunity after our hip replacement surgeries to get back to the activities that we love to do. Sometimes they may take some modification to really get back. That does not mean that we're not going to be as successful as we once were, or as good as we once were, or as competitive as we once were. It just means we have to modify, not get worse, but we may actually even get better, get faster, get stronger, get healthier. So think about the activities you want to get back to, try them, determine and experiment with different modifications that you can use to do what you love better, and even better than you were doing it before hip replacement surgery. That's what I did with golf. That's what I did with running. That's what I do with a lot of different activities that I love to do, whether that's, I also play volleyball, and I used to jump pretty high. I don't jump anymore. I have a pretty solid ground game in volleyball, and I use that to my advantage rather than jumping as high as I once did. And all of these modifications are okay. It's important to stay active and just to keep doing what we can do to improve our health, so that we can have our hips and our health and a high level of health for the longest period we possibly can. Now, I hope all of this was helpful. Go out and modify and love and get back to the activities that you love to do. I'd love to hear about all these things. Send me a message, send me comments in the podcast area for comments. And I hope this was helpful. So thank you so much for tuning into the Hip Replacement Podcast. And until next time, I wish you the best recovery possible. Take care.